The great farmer, poet, prophet, Wendell Berry, writes, "It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings." The impeded stream is the one that sings. So in case you get sick of staring at me, we have this stream that'll be playing on loop for the rest of the sermon. A stream impeded by stones throughout, and yet watch it sing. Recently, I was having a conversation with a dear friend, another seminary, theologically trained person, someone I consider wise and mature, someone who guides and coaches others, someone who I would entrust myself to witness and guide me. On the verge of entering their 40s, we were reflecting on our different decades of life thus far and the lessons that we've learned, right? How had we grown and changed in ways that we're proud of? What have been those hard-won life lessons? And the painful realization that started the conversation: "This is not where I thought I'd be at this point in my life," he said. "This is not where I thought I'd be on the verge of 40, starting over. Lacking the stability that I worked so hard to achieve, having worked so hard to become a version of myself that I'm proud of. Now having to face the fact that I made some choices that went against that image of myself, of who I thought I was, of who I want to be." You ever been there? It may well be that only when we come to the end of ourselves that the real journey can finally begin. This past fall, about 50 of us younger, emphasis on the UCC clergy from across the country, we gathered in Phoenix as part of a selective cohort-based Next Generation Leadership Initiative. It's a 6-year journey that seeks to, as they say, equip, energize, and empower us to build vibrant congregations that change lives and further God's mission in the world. And so as we were in conversation throughout the week, my cohort was reflecting on ourselves as leaders, on how we've changed and grown over the last few years, where our strengths lie, where they do not. And in the midst of this, one of my talented colleagues reflected, "Being human is really hard when you've never truly been one." I had to close my eyes and stop for a moment when I heard that one. Being human is really hard when you've never truly been one. See, they were reflecting on leading others while trying to heal oneself from complex childhood trauma, which, unlike trauma from a singular, overwhelming event, as many of us think when we think of trauma, we think of a singular, traumatic event. Complex childhood trauma results from repeated experiences of abuse or neglect, and that experience itself, taken on its own, each one might not have itself been traumatic, but repeated over and over again over the course of years as a young child is developing and growing, it becomes traumatic for us. Seemingly small things that are in fact big things. And so to survive, to ensure that they were seen as valuable, this person learned to be the kind of adult, learned to be an adult at a very young age. Right? They didn't really get to be a kid, have a childhood. From an early age, they existed in a chaotic, unpredictable, unsafe environment and learned that to stay safe, they had to be the calm in the storm, the one who holds it all together. Those of us who have experienced this often learn to bend, to minimize, to deny ourselves our humanity, our own basic needs, in order to first meet others' needs. We begin to believe that this superpower of sorts, of showing up for others, is in fact our identity. It is who we are, what makes us valuable, without realizing that it is also our kryptonite. And maybe, in fact, we're not superheroes after all. We're just fallible humans. Because you cannot be truly human without yourself having needs, without allowing others to also show up for you. It may well be that only once we've come to the end of ourselves, of how we've existed thus far, exhausted and frustrated that we're here again, that the real spiritual journey can finally begin. Because the real spiritual journey is nothing less than the journey of discovering what it means to be truly alive, to be fully human, awake to both the brutal and the beautiful world around us and within us. Attentive to both our own spiritual, mental, emotional, physical needs, as well as those of others. No healing, no true transformation can take place unless and until we come to this point. Until we finally stop trying to hold it all together when we know that we can't, it's going to break us at some point. Stop focusing on the faults and failures of others and simply let it be what it is in that moment. Broken. Not where we thought we'd be at this point in life. Where do we go? What do we do when how we've always done things no longer works? When the world around us, when our lives fall apart, when the identity we've staked our value on, our worthiness on, begins to unravel, when we can honestly say, I just don't know what to do anymore. What then? This is where Nicodemus finds himself as he approaches Jesus one night, both literally and metaphorically in the dark. The larger context is that Nicodemus is in the midst of an identity crisis of sorts. Right, the containers that he has used to make sense of the world, of himself, of God, it's all beginning to crack, to fall apart. And this crisis of faith is, at its core, a crisis of what it means to be human and alive, of belonging, of family. Right? His questioning, his growth is not merely about his change. It also carries the weight of impending loss, of relationships. Because sometimes people can't grow with us or go with us when we change. He knows this, and he's probably, like any of us, a little bit freaking out on the inside. And so he seeks out Jesus, someone that he knows is wise, is a teacher of God, but who his own tradition is also skeptical of. You want to transform this dark night of the soul into the realm of God, Jesus asks Nicodemus. You want to know true life, abundant life, the kind of life that holds you in love and dignity, even when life is raging around you and you don't know if you can keep on keeping on? Then you must be born again. What? That's your big answer? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That's effectively Nicodemus' response. Like, what does that even mean, Jesus? As you may have caught in the story in English, the Greek word that Jesus uses here can also be translated as anew. Born again, born anew, born from above. It's sort of ambiguous. What does he mean when he says this? And so Jesus and Nicodemus, they have this back and forth. Nicodemus asking a genuine question about what this possibly means, even if it sounds a bit absurd to our ears. And I'll just say, since most of how we have heard it is in the sense of being born again, believing that Jesus is your Lord and Savior so that you can go to heaven, that's not what Jesus and Nicodemus are talking about at this point. Nicodemus and Jesus are discussing life that is possible, that is available here and now, in this messy, brutal, and yet exquisitely beautiful world of ours. It's not about going to heaven when we die and what we believe that gets us there. And I think the fact that the gospel names the odd hour at which this passionate encounter takes place makes that detail significant, right? It's in the middle of the night when it's darkest, at a time before electricity, at a moment when one could hardly see one's hand in front of their face. Jesus and Nicodemus engage in a passionate dialogue about what it means to truly see. To see, as our blind siblings can teach us, with more than our eyes, more than the surface level of things, with more than physical sight, to see with the eyes of our hearts. It may well be that only when we finally stop pretending we know exactly what we're doing or where exactly we're going, we let go of our 10-step plan that's going to get us there, when we finally admit that we're not as in control as we want to believe that we are, that only then can the real spiritual journey actually begin. How does one then begin again, anew? How does one emerge into the light of a new day? While Nicodemus' question might sound a bit simplistic, just straight up dumb, right? Can one climb back into one's mother's womb? It is essentially the same response many of us do seek in these moments, right? To begin again, to begin anew by somehow undoing what has been. Like, let's just hit rewind. Let's just erase it from memory. Let's just pretend it never happened, all right, and moving forward. As if. You ever been there? You ever wanted that kind of redo? Take it back? But of course, that's not how life works. We don't get to literally start over. We can't undo, we can't unknow, we can't wish something away as if it never happened. What has been will never not have been. That sucks. And our ancient spiritual tradition insists that facing this honestly, it doesn't end there with this sense of dread. Doesn't end with us being stuck at the bottom of a pit with no way out, as much as it might feel like that. Our ancient spiritual tradition invites us to trust that even when we do not know exactly which way we are going, there is healing in simply taking the next faithful step. That life itself, our lives in particular, are like the impeded stream. Even if there's a glitch and it stops, you get the point. We may have different obstacles impeding the flow of life, but life can, life does, life will flow on. We don't have to know all the answers. We are simply invited to entrust ourselves to the flow of this living water. That's it. Which again, healing sounds nice. But those of us who have actually been on a healing journey, we'll tell you, it kind of sucks, especially at first. It is hard to shift well-worn patterns. It's easier to return to what's familiar, even if it's chaos, than to seek a way out beyond it, which is entirely unfamiliar and scary. Right? We fear the unknown, even if it's true life itself. It's really hard to be human when you've never truly been one. Too often, we've settled for the spiritual journey as that of making pronouncements. Right? What do you believe? List out your affirmations. For some, that sounds like, how we've interpreted this passage. Beliefs about Jesus and God, you sort of have this roadmap, and that gets you to the destination of heaven. There you go. But for others of us, that also can sound differently, but it's the same sort of thing, right? Beliefs about people's dignity, beliefs about God's love for the oppressed, about our call to go and love likewise. Articulating these values, gaining clarity on what we are about as a church, as individuals, it is valuable. We need to do this work. That's why we spent so much time doing this work over the last 5-6 years. But that is not the whole spiritual journey. Too often that leads to this sort of self-righteous, we're the good people, they're the bad people, we're on the right side of history, they're on the wrong side of history. It just lives into this sort of binary way of thinking. The real spiritual journey exists in the gap between what we've known, who we've been, and the unknown future to which God is calling us. Becoming a different version of ourselves that we can't quite get our minds around. Where we can no longer merely insist on our own way and shout platitudes and fling blame. Here, we are called, as Paul writes, to examine ourselves. Examine yourself. And as we do that individually, I'll add that the same is true for us at the collective level. As a church, as a nation, until and unless we collectively undergo a soul-searching process about our history, about what has brought us to this terrifyingly dysfunctional, dystopian moment, we cannot forge a new future beyond it. Electing a new leader is not going to end the cycle. Until we can begin to recognize how decade after decade, for hundreds of years, we have found ourselves in the same recurring patterns, and instead of rushing to justify ourselves or just simply blame others, simply acknowledge the brokenness for what it is and how we are all caught up in it. None of us has clean hands. Until we do that, we cannot move forward as a people. If we do not do this, we may reach a point where we are no longer a people. I'm guessing many, if not all of you, know that famous serenity prayer. Long cited over bad coffee in church basements and fellowship halls like our own. It actually comes from a foremost UCC minister and theologian named Reinhold Niebuhr, who himself lived through the global chaos of the early mid-20th century, of world wars abroad, of reactionary white supremacy trying to thwart the movement for civil rights at home. It was in the early 1940s, at the height of Nazism, of World War II, that he penned those now famous words. God, give us the grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things that should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish one from the other. This historical context is not coincidental. It is from this very crucible of death, of global reckoning, and of reckoning with the church's explicit complicity or silence in the face of Nazism, that he arrived at this most honest prayer, not unlike the prayer that Thomas Merton penned right about the same time. I have no idea where I'm going, God. Help. I'm out of answers. I'm out of solutions. To begin again, anew, I hate this truth as much as you probably do. We have to come to the end of ourselves and our striving. We will keep arriving at the same place. Here again. Same argument. Same pattern. Until, broken down but not crushed, we choose to take just one, just the next most faithful step in a new direction. Try something we haven't tried before. Open ourselves to new possibilities. We begin to make our way toward a new day. Not like those drinking that bad coffee in our fellowship hall twice a week. Friends, the obstacles along a river does not make it any less a river. I think sometimes we internalize this sense that because there are branches or rocks impeding us, these obstacles that we've had to overcome, that somehow makes us less valuable if we acknowledge and admit them. But it is the impeded stream that sings. They don't make you less. They make you human. You can entrust yourself to this living water. You can entrust yourself to this living water. May it be so with you, with us. God, help us with all the world. Amen.